The chess set was floating in the recycling chute like a dead thing waiting to be forgotten. Daniel Webb stopped his cleaning cart and stared at it. Hand-carved pieces made from something that looked like pale bone. A board of black and white squares, worn smooth by years of touch. Someone had thrown it away, or maybe it had been lost for decades in the station's maze of pipes and ducts that he should have left it. Protocol said everything in the chute went to processing. But Daniel had not touched a chess set since his grandfather died, and something about those carved pieces made his chest hurt in a familiar way that he took it. Orizen 7 was not the worst place to work in the galaxy. It was just the loneliest. A prison station orbiting a dying red star, holding criminals from 100 different worlds. Daniel had worked here for 3 years. He fixed broken pipes. He cleaned floors. He ate his meals alone in his small room and tried not to think about the life he used to have. Back on his colony world, he had been a teacher. He had taught children to read, to do mathematics, to believe they could become anything. Then the mining corporation came. They bought the colony. They closed the schools. They told Daniel his services were no longer needed. He ended up here. A janitor in a place where nobody noticed him. That was fine. He had learned to be invisible. The day after he found the chess set, Daniel was cleaning near Block Omega. This was the restricted wing at the far end of the station. Only one cell was occupied there. Nobody talked about why. Daniel had passed this corridor 1,000 times. He had never stopped. But today, as he pushed his cart past the heavy metal door, he saw something through the small viewport window. Light. Someone had turned on the light inside, that he knew he should keep walking. Block Omega was above his clearance level. But curiosity is a strange thing. It makes people do things they know they should not do. Daniel looked through the viewport. Inside the cell sat an old alien. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed almost gray. His hair was white and hung past his shoulders. His eyes were silver, like 2 small moons. He wore simple prison clothes that hung loose on his bony frame. He was staring at the wall. Just staring, not moving, not blinking. Daniel had seen many prisoners in his time here. Angry ones, sad ones, dangerous ones. But he had never seen anyone who looked so completely alone. This alien looked like he had forgotten that other people existed. Like he had been sitting in that cell, staring at that wall, for 100 years. Daniel walked away. He finished his shift. He went to his room. He ate his dinner, but he could not stop thinking about those silver eyes. The next day, he went back to Block Omega. He brought the chess set. It was stupid. It was against every rule. The alien probably did not even know what chess was. But Daniel held up the board to the viewport anyway. He pressed it against the thick glass so the alien could see. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the old alien turned his head. His silver eyes focused on the chessboard. Something changed in his face. It was small, barely visible, but Daniel saw it. Interest, life, a tiny spark where there had been nothing. Daniel pointed at himself, then at the board, then at the alien. He mimed moving a piece. He raised his eyebrows in a question. The alien stood up. He walked to the glass. He was very tall, Daniel realized. Even bent with age, he was nearly 7 feet. He looked at the board for a long time. Then he pointed at the white pawn and made a small gesture. Forward 2 squares, Daniel grinned. He set up the board on his cleaning cart and made the move. Then he made his own move and showed the alien. They could barely hear each other through the thick glass. So they played in silence. Move by move, gesture by gesture, the alien learned fast. Impossibly fast. By the end of Daniel's lunch break, he was already pushing Daniel into difficult positions. When Daniel finally had to leave for his afternoon duties, he pressed his hand against the glass in farewell. The alien looked at his hand for a moment. Then he pressed his own hand against the glass from the other side, blue fingers against pink ones, separated by 2 inches of reinforced transparent steel. Daniel smiled and turned to go. Again, the word was so quiet that Daniel almost missed it. He turned back. The alien was still standing at the glass. His voice was rough, like something that had not been used in years. Again, the alien repeated, "Tomorrow." It was the first word the prisoner had spoken in 10 years. Daniel did not know that. He would not learn it until much later. All he knew was that a lonely old man wanted to play chess with him. Tomorrow, Daniel agreed. Same time, he walked away with his cart, the carved chess pieces rattling softly. Behind him, in his empty cell, the old alien sat down and looked at the wall again. But this time he was not staring at nothing, that he was thinking about his next move. 3 months passed like water through cupped hands. Daniel and the prisoner played chess every day. Through thick glass, in stolen moments between shifts. Using gestures and patience instead of words, they developed their own language. A tap on the glass meant your turn. A flat palm meant I need to think. A small wave meant I have to go now. 2 fingers raised meant good move. A shake of the head with a smile meant you almost had me. The alien introduced himself as Reven. Just Reven. No family name, no title, no history. Daniel did not push. Everyone in this place had things they did not want to talk about. On days when Daniel could not visit, he wrote notes. He would describe his move on paper and slide it through the food slot in the door. When he returned the next day, Reven would have arranged the pieces in a specific pattern. His response, his half of a conversation that could only happen on 64 squares. Their games became more than games. Reven would place pieces in ways that asked questions. A knight facing outward meant, tell me about your world. A row of pawns meant, how are you feeling today? A king alone in the center meant, I am glad you came. Daniel learned to read these patterns. He learned to answer them. One afternoon, Daniel brought a small photograph. His grandfather, standing in a garden back on Earth. The old man held a chess trophy and grinned at the camera. Daniel pressed the photo against the glass. He taught me, Daniel said, speaking loud and slow. When I was small, we played every Sunday. Reven looked at the photo for a long time. Then he made a gesture Daniel had not seen before. He touched his chest, then pointed at Daniel, then touched the glass where the photo had been. Daniel understood. Thank you for sharing this with me. He nodded. His throat felt tight. Reven began asking about Earth. About humans. He wanted to know small things. What did rain feel like? What did humans eat for breakfast? What sounds did Earth animals make? Did humans really sleep for 8 hours every night? Daniel answered everything. He told Reven about thunderstorms and pancakes and the way dogs bark when they are happy. He told him about snow and beaches and the smell of coffee in the morning. Reven listened to it all like a man dying of thirst being given water. In return, Daniel asked about Reven's people. The Salanthri, tall beings with blue skin and silver eyes, from a world with 3 suns. Reven spoke carefully about his home, the crystal forests, the singing winds, the way children learn to dance before they learn to walk. He never spoke about himself, only his world, only his people. Daniel noticed this, but said nothing. One evening, Daniel told Reven about losing his teaching job, about the corporation that bought his colony, about the children he had taught, scattered now across the galaxy, about how he ended up cleaning floors in a prison station at the edge of nowhere. Reven listened. When Daniel finished, the old alien made a series of moves on the board, a complex sequence that ended with Daniel's king trapped but not captured. You see, Reven said through the glass. His voice was still rough, but stronger now. You are not beaten. You're only surrounded. There is always another move. Daniel laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in months. Their game that day was long. Reven made a mistake near the end. He moved his bishop to a square where Daniel could easily take it. Daniel paused. He looked at the board. Then he looked at Reven. You did that on purpose, Daniel said. Reven smiled. It was a sad smile. A good leader knows when to lose gracefully. Daniel did not understand what that meant. Not then. He noticed other things too. Reven's hands shook sometimes. His breathing was not always steady. The old alien was sick, maybe dying. Prison doctors came once a month if you were lucky. Daniel started bringing extra things. A blanket smuggled from storage. Warm socks. A small bottle of honey for Reven's tea. He pushed them through the maintenance shaft that connected to Reven's cell. It was against every rule. He did it anyway. Reven never said thank you. He did not need to. The way he wrapped himself in that blanket said everything. One night, as Daniel was leaving Block Omega, someone spoke behind him. Webb. Daniel turned. Warden Greaves stood in the corridor. A heavy man with tired eyes. He had run this prison for 20 years. Daniel expected punishment. A warning. Termination. Instead, Greaves just looked at him. Be careful who you grow attached to, Webb. Some ghosts have long shadows. Then he walked away. Daniel stood alone in the corridor for a long time, thinking about ghosts, thinking about shadows, thinking about an old alien who knew how to lose gracefully and wondering what he had lost. The search began with a name typed into a database, Salanthri. Daniel wanted to know more about Reven's people. He used the station's public information terminal during his breaks. What he found made him sit very still for a very long time. The Salanthri Dominion had once ruled 3,000 star systems, billions of people, hundreds of worlds. They had been one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. 15 years ago, their empire fell to a civil war. Generals against their emperor. The royal family executed. The emperor himself supposedly killed in the final battle. Now the Dominion was broken into a dozen smaller governments, each claiming to be the true successor. Daniel searched for images of the last emperor. He found nothing. The records were sealed, classified by the Galactic Compact. No name, no face, just a title that no longer existed. He thought about Reven, an old Salanthri, alone in a maximum security cell, speaking like a man who had lost everything. The next day, Daniel sat down at their usual place by the viewport. He set up the board. They played 3 moves in silence. Then Daniel asked the question, "Who are you, Reven?" Before this place. Reven's hand stopped over a night. His silver eyes met Daniel's through the glass. For a moment, Daniel thought he would not answer. Then Reven sat back. "Let me tell you a story. A parable, if you will." Daniel listened. "Once there was a young prince," Reven said. His voice was soft. He was born into an empire that was already dying. His people had ruled for 10,000 years, but they had grown cruel. They kept slaves. They crushed anyone who spoke against them. The prince saw this and knew it was wrong. Reven moved a piece. Daniel moved one back. The game continued as the story unfolded. When the prince became emperor, he tried to change things. He freed the slaves. He gave rights to the lower castes. He told his people that power meant responsibility, not privilege. What happened? Daniel asked. His generals did not agree. They had grown rich on the old ways. They called the emperor weak, a traitor to his own kind. They gathered armies. They prepared for war. Reven paused. His hands were shaking again. The emperor had a choice. He could fight. His loyal forces might win, but the war would last for years. Billions would die. Whole worlds would burn. Reven looked at the board, or he could surrender. Let his enemies claim victory. Let them kill him and end the threat. He surrendered, Daniel said quietly. He did. They executed his family, his wife, his children, his brothers and sisters. They were going to execute him too, but someone arranged for him to disappear instead. He never learned who. Reven placed his queen in a corner. Alone, surrounded. Now he sits in a cell, playing chess with a janitor, waiting to die. Silence filled the corridor. The hum of the station's systems was the only sound. Daniel looked at the old alien through the glass. The last emperor of 3,000 worlds. The man who had given up everything to save billions of lives. Forgotten. Alone. Playing chess to remember what it felt like to be alive. Daniel did not know what to say. What do you say to a fallen emperor? What words are big enough for that kind of loss? In the end, he said nothing. He simply set up the board for a new game. They played for 2 hours. It was the best game they had ever had. Every move was perfect. Every response was brilliant. 2 minds working at their highest level, speaking through pawns and bishops and knights. Reven won. Checkmate in 47 moves. When it was over, Daniel did something he had never done before. He opened the small food slot in the door. He reached his hand through. Reven stared at the hand. Pink fingers. Short nails. The hand of a human janitor who had been a teacher, who had been a dreamer. Slowly, Reven took it. His grip was weak. His skin was cold, but it was real. The first human touch he had felt in 15 years. They held hands through a slot in a prison door. An emperor and a janitor. 2 lonely people who had found each other at the edge of the universe. Thank you, Revan whispered. For what? For seeing me. Just me. Not a symbol. Not a ghost. Just an old man who likes chess. Daniel squeezed his hand. Same time tomorrow. Same time tomorrow. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He kept thinking about crowns and cages, about the price of doing the right thing, about an emperor who chose peace over power. In the morning, an alarm woke the whole station that a Salanthri military vessel had arrived. They were requesting permission to dock. Someone was coming to inspect the prison, and Daniel knew, with a cold certainty, that they were looking for a ghost. She walked like someone who had killed before and would kill again. Lieutenant Nira Voss of the Salanthri Special Forces entered Orizen, 7 with 6 soldiers behind her. She was young for her rank. Her blue skin was darker than Revan's, marked with pale scars across her cheek and throat. Her silver eyes moved constantly, watching everything. Warden Greaves met her at the docking bay. He kept his face blank, but Daniel saw his hands trembling slightly as he shook her hand. Lieutenant Voss, we were not expecting a military inspection. Inspections work better when they are unexpected. Her voice was cold. I will need access to all prisoner records, all staff files, all restricted areas. Of course, I will have my people prepare everything. Daniel watched from across the bay, pretending to fix a ventilation panel. Voss glanced his way once. Her eyes passed over him like he was furniture. Good. He wanted to be furniture. Over the next 3 days, Voss and her soldiers searched every corner of the station. They pulled records. They scanned cells. They questioned every staff member. Daniel's turn came on the second day. He sat in a small room with Voss across from him. One of her soldiers stood by the door. The lights were very bright. Daniel Webb, Voss said, reading from a tablet. Human, former teacher, now a maintenance staff. 3 years at this facility. Yes, ma'am. You have clearance for most areas of the station, including corridors near Block Omega. Daniel kept his face empty. I cleaned those corridors. Never been inside Block Omega itself. Above my level. Have you ever seen anyone enter or exit that wing? Just the warden sometimes. Medical staff once a month. Voss studied him. Her silver eyes were nothing like Revan's. Where his were tired and kind, hers were sharp as broken glass. Do you know what is kept in Block Omega, Mr. Webb? No, ma'am. I just push my cart and do my job. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. You may go. Daniel walked out slowly. His heart was beating so hard he was sure she could hear it. That night, he went to Block Omega. He had to warn Revan. The old emperor was sitting by the viewport, waiting. He had already heard the news. They're looking for me, Revan said through the glass. They have been looking for 15 years. I always knew they would find me eventually. We have to do something. Hide you. Move you. Something. Revan shook his head slowly. There is nowhere to hide, my friend. And I am too old and too tired to run. So what? You just let them take you. If that is what must happen, yes. Daniel slammed his palm against the glass. Why? You could fight. You could expose them for what they did. The galaxy should know the truth. The truth. Revan smiled sadly. The truth is that my people need peace. They need stability. Another war would destroy what is left of the Dominion. If I die quietly, my story dies with me. No rallying point for rebels. No symbol for revolution. Just silence. That is not fair. No, it is not. But leadership was never about fairness. It was about sacrifice. Daniel leaned against the glass. You taught me something these past months. You taught me that a good player sees 10 moves ahead. So tell me, Revan, what is your move? The old emperor looked at him. Something changed in his silver eyes. The sadness was still there, but underneath it, something else flickered. Something that looked almost like hope. You really want to know? Yes. Revan stood up. He walked close to the glass. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. The chest set you found. The one floating in the recycling chute. What do you think it came from? Daniel frowned. I do not know. I assumed someone threw it away. I made it. 15 years ago. I carved those pieces myself from the bones of my dinner rations. I spent 2 years on them. Then I put them in the recycling system and prayed that someone would find them. Why? Revan smiled. It was a real smile. The first one Daniel had ever seen on his face. Because I've been waiting 15 years for someone to ask me that question. Someone I could trust. Someone who saw me as a person, not a prisoner. He pressed his hand against the glass. I have been waiting for you, Daniel Webb. Before Daniel could respond, alarms began screaming through the corridor. Red lights flashed. Heavy boots pounded on metal floors. Voss had found what she was looking for. Block Omega was no longer a secret. The alarms kept screaming, but Daniel did not run. Tell me, he said. Tell me everything. Now. Raven spoke fast. They had minutes at most. The generals who overthrew me, they committed crimes. Massacres. Genocide. They destroyed entire worlds that supported my reforms. They enslaved millions. The galaxy does not know because they buried the evidence. But I found proof before they captured me. What kind of proof? Communications. Orders. Video recordings. Everything needed to convict them before the Galactic Compact. Daniel's mind was racing. Where is this proof now? Reven pointed at the chess set on Daniel's cart. In the pieces, I carved data chips into the bases of each one. 20 gigabytes of evidence hidden in bone and plastic. I put the set in a recycling system, hoping someone would find it. Someone who could get the data off this station. Daniel picked up the White King. It felt slightly heavier than it should. Why did you not just send it yourself? You had access to the recycling system. Because they monitor everything that leaves this wing. Every molecule is scanned. But a chess set picked up by a janitor, carried around in a cleaning cart for months? That is just garbage. Invisible. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Getting closer. What do I do? Daniel asked. The station's communication array. Upper level, Section 9. There's a broadcast terminal that can reach the Galactic Compact's Justice Council. Upload the data. Let the galaxy see what the generals have done. They will kill you before the message gets through. Reven nodded. Probably. But the truth will survive. That is enough. It is not enough for me. Daniel. Reven pressed both hands against the glass. You asked me why I trusted you. A human janitor. Nobody special. Nobody important. The footsteps were very close now. Because you saw a lonely old man through this glass, and you taught him to play chess. You brought me blankets when I was cold. You held my hand through a slot in a door. You saw me as a person when the entire galaxy had forgotten I existed. Reven's voice cracked. That is the rarest thing in the universe, my friend. Rarer than gold. Rarer than starlight. Simple kindness, given freely, expecting nothing in return. The door at the end of the corridor burst open. Voss and her soldiers poured through. Daniel grabbed the chess set and ran up. He knew the station better than anyone. 3 years of cleaning every corridor, every shaft, every hidden corner. He ducked into a maintenance tunnel as weapons fire scorched the wall behind him. The soldiers were fast, but Daniel was desperate. He climbed through air ducts. He crawled under floor panels. He squeezed through gaps that should have been too small for a human body. Behind him, he heard Voss shouting orders. Heard the heavy boots splitting up, trying to cut off his escape routes. Daniel reached a junction and stopped. Left led to the docking bay. Right led to the communication array. If he went left, he could escape. Find a ship. Disappear with the evidence. Stay alive long enough to figure out another way. If he went right, he would be trapped. The array was a dead end. One door in, no doors out. He thought about Reven. About 15 years alone in a cell. About a man who chose peace over power, who gave up everything for people who would never know his name. Daniel went right. The communication room was small. Screens covered one wall. A central terminal blinked with ready lights. Daniel pulled the chess pieces from the set. One by one, he cracked them open on the edge of the console. Inside each one was a tiny chip, no bigger than a grain of rice. He found the data port. Inserted the first chip. The screen lit up. Files began scrolling. Reports. Images. Videos. A general ordering the destruction of a civilian transport. Another signing execution orders for 10,000 prisoners. A meeting where they planned the murder of the Emperor's children. Daniel felt sick. But he kept working. Chip after chip. Upload after upload. Behind him, the door exploded inward. Voss stood in the doorway, weapon raised. Her soldiers flanked her. Step away from the console, human. Daniel's finger hovered over the transmit button. This evidence will go to the Galactic Compact. Everyone will see what your leaders did. They are not my leaders. Voss's voice was strange. They are murderers who stole power from a good man. Daniel blinked. Then why are you hunting him? Because I had to know if he was real. If the emperor who freed my grandmother from slavery actually existed. Or if he was just a story my family told to give us hope. She lowered her weapon. Send it. Daniel pressed the button. The data burst outward at the speed of light. To every station, every news feed, every government in the galaxy. The truth was finally free. And somewhere in Block Omega, an old emperor smiled. The galaxy burned with the truth. Within hours, the evidence was everywhere. News channels played the recordings on loop. Governments demanded investigations. Protests erupted across 100 Salanthri worlds. The generals who had ruled for 15 years found themselves surrounded by enemies. Their own soldiers refused to follow orders. Their allies abandoned them. One by one, they were arrested, tried, and convicted. But all of that came later. In the moment, Daniel stood in the communication room with Voss and her soldiers. The screens showed confirmation messages flooding in from across the galaxy. Received. 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 It is done, Voss said quietly. Daniel turned to her. You knew. This whole time, you knew he was innocent. I knew the stories my grandmother told me. A kind emperor who freed the slaves. A good man who was betrayed. Voss holstered her weapon. I joined the military to find out if he was real. I spent years working my way up, getting assigned to missions that might lead me to him. And if he had been what they said, a tyrant, a monster, Voss looked at the floor. Then I would have killed him myself and let the legend die. Daniel understood. She had needed to know, just like he had needed to teach a lonely alien to play chess. Some things do not make sense until they are done. They walked together to Block Omega. The corridor was filled with soldiers and station staff, all staring at the cell door. Nobody moved to stop them. Inside, Revan sat on his bed. His hands were folded in his lap. His silver eyes were calm. Voss approached the glass. For a long moment, she just looked at him. The emperor who freed her grandmother. The man who had been a ghost for 15 years. Then she did something nobody expected. She knelt. Your Majesty. Revan shook his head slowly. Please stand. I am not your emperor. I have not been anyone's emperor for a very long time. Voss stood. Her voice was thick. What happens now? Now, my people are free to choose. That is all I ever wanted. Not power. Not revenge. Just the chance for them to decide their own future. They will want you back. They will beg you to lead them again. And I will refuse. Revan stood and walked to the glass. I am old, Lieutenant. I am tired. I have given my life to duty. What remains of it, I would like to spend in peace. He looked at Daniel. With a friend, if he will have me. 1 year later, the universe had changed. The Salanthri Dominion was reorganizing itself. A new council ruled now, elected by the people. They offered Revan his throne back 7 times. He refused 7 times. Instead, he lived on a small colony world at the edge of explored space. A quiet place with green fields and gentle winds. He had a small house with a garden and a porch that faced the sunset. Daniel visited every month. He had left Orizen, 7 behind. Someone had offered him a job at school on this same colony. Teaching children again, showing them how to read and dream and believe. Today, they sat on the porch as the twin suns sank below the horizon. A chessboard rested between them, pieces scattered from their latest game. You cheated, Daniel said. I did not cheat. I simply made a move you did not expect. That is what cheating is. Revan laughed. It was a good sound, free and warm. Nothing like the broken whisper Daniel had first heard through prison glass that a year of sunlight and fresh air had changed the old emperor. He was still thin, still tired, but there was color in his skin now. Life in his eyes. Daniel set up the board for a new game. White and black. 64 squares. The same conversation they had been having for over a year. You know, Daniel said, you never told me something. What? Our first real game. Through the glass. Who won? Revan placed his king in the center of the board. He looked at Daniel with those silver eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, that had watched his family die, but had stared at a cell wall for 15 years. "We both did," he said. Daniel smiled. He moved his pawn forward 2 squares. Revan moved his. The sun set. The stars came out. 2 friends played chess on a porch at the edge of the universe. Neither of them ruled anything. Both of them were free. And somewhere in the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, children learned a new story. Not about emperors or wars or fallen kingdoms, but about a janitor who found a chess set in the garbage, who taught a lonely prisoner to play, who saw a person when the universe saw nothing. The simplest story, the oldest story, the only one that ever really mattered, kindness given freely. Checkmate.